Okay, Lane Memorial Library is the host now.
Welcome to Lynn. Welcome to Anne that are just joining us. Right as we were getting ready to get started, Paulina's computer died. So Stacy is helping her with the tech support there, and then we should be back in just a moment. While we are in the middle of the presentation, we ask that you have your speaker and your microphone and your screen off. Once Paulina's done with her presentation, we will turn on both screens and mics, so we can do some question and answers.
You want to turn yourself.
Welcome, Steve. You're in the right place. We are experiencing a little bit of technical difficulties right now. Stacy is helping Paulina to get her screen on. And then, oh, look, we'll be starting up in just a moment.
Here we go. All right. All right. Hello, everyone. I am so thrilled that you are here, and I do apologize for the technical difficulties, but God willing, creek don't rise. That will be the only thing that happens tonight. And that will be our misadventure for the evening. So hello, I am Paulina Shadowens. I am the head of Children's Services here. And also I am Coventry Forbes. I was the author of a history mystery romance called Edenfleet. So I did give a presentation about this pre-COVID. So I'm trying very hard not to talk about anything I talked about then, for any viewers who also sat in on that, but I'm very happy to answer questions at the end if you have any inquiries about the whole making of this. So I'm going to take you on two interconnected adventures this evening. One is the ideas that came to being this book and self-publishing and how that worked, accompanied by my adventures in England and Wales. And so let's begin on this very foggy night, so it gives us exactly the right atmosphere for it. And I hope you have a good cup of tea and are ready to go. So here we are, friends. So from my earliest memories, and even before my earliest memories, I love to share stories. I love to create them. I love to tell them. And so all my life, I wanted to publish a novel. And in fact, I'd like to do much more than just one, but it took me this long to get the first one started. So I was in graduate school. I was working 4 part-time jobs and taking 4 graduate classes all at the same time. And I was fried. And so I was very blessed by having an employer who said that in my downtime, when there wasn't anything going on, that I could write. And since I couldn't afford either time-wise or money-wise to get to England, where I was pining to go, I was able to go there in my imagination. And that's how Edenfleet started. So the reason I decided to self-publish was because Edenfleet didn't fit neatly into any particular genre. Clearly it's a history, mystery, romance, but there are degrees of that. And I knew I wasn't going to be writing, it was far too tame to be something like this, a bodice ripper. But on the other hand, it was really important for the characters to become aware of each other in every possible way, including on a sensual level, and to be drawn to each other as a growing part of their relationship. So I knew it had to be a little more sensual than something like this, which I have read in books like this and I have enjoyed them, but mine was neither fish nor fowl nor fine red herring. And so self-publishing seemed to be the best way to go. And so fortunately, Amazon's KDP format is pretty easy to follow. And I had great help from friends and colleagues to help me get formatted. My friend Danielle helped me with the typeface. And then I'd always wanted to illustrate as well as to write. So I decided I would, didn't want to use any of the pre-formatted covers that they had. I wanted mine to be distinct. So I illustrated the cover. So I'm technically an illustrator as well. But in contemplating it now, I would like to do a different one. I think it looks a bit more like Little House on the Prairie than an adult novel. So I do have an idea for a photograph I'd love to do. It's just a matter of models and costuming and lighting and all of the really demanding parts of photography that I'm not yet adept at, but I do have an image in my head of how I would like to change it eventually. So when I was 15, I had the great blessing of being able to go to England for the first time. And we stayed mostly in London. It was a friend's family who took me with them. But we did get to the outskirts. We did get to Hampshire, and I fell in love with Hampshire. As you can see from this picture, this is partly why. Just it's everything. It's idyllic that you think about when you think about England. Thatched cottages, and as I described in Edenfleet, my book, just sheep scattered everywhere on the most glorious green you've ever seen. And I described it as being like French knots and a green velvet quilt. So again, these pictures were not taken by me. They were taken by my dear friend Julie's husband, Rich, who's a talented photographer. And he has graciously allowed me to show you his photos. And then at the end, I'll show you photos I took more recently in my trip into 2020. So part of in Hampshire is Winchester, which is this marvelous, mazy, medieval city. And here I am coming out of the cathedral bookstore with my haul. But you can just tell from the windows, the beams, all of that fit into how I was describing places in Edenfleet. They're imaginary, but very much based on this reality. And again, there's Winchester Cathedral. And at one point I have my hero go there and describe it a little bit. And it was great to be able to give tiny little details, like underneath one of the seats, there is a face of a little gargoyle. And so he notes that as well. So it's great and exciting to be able to use the things that gave me pleasure into letting it be what my characters experience and then what my readers experience. And I had the great blessing of being able to go to Jane Austen's house in Chawton. I am a huge Jane Austen fan. And so to be able to actually walk the floors that she walked, to look at the table where she sat and wrote her masterpieces, was beyond a joy. And one of the great opportunities that they offer there, the very wise people at Chawton, is they let you put on facsimile Regency era dresses. And my story is set in the Regency era. It's set in 1816, when Jane Austen was still alive. So here are Julie and I enjoying our frocks. And it was, they talk about actors who, when they have put on the costumes, really have a better sense of their characters. And I would say, at least in my experience, that is true for writers as well. Once I had put on the dress, I just felt more connected with my heroine Lucy's world. Some of the outfits were better fits than others. But just the dependency on having someone have to help you to get dressed every morning and every night. And if you were wealthy and changing for meals, you would have that too. And so that actually featured into Edenfleet as well. I hadn't planned it originally, but I think that on a very subconscious level, oops, and all of a sudden,
Try to restart it. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So we're going to share that screen again.
Share a drawing thing, and I think that was being activated. I apologize.
Okay. So
That at least made it go away.
so it's a very interesting notion to be, someone who's used to just whisking in and out of their clothes to have to stand and wait and have someone do all the hooks and all the buttons. And that became some pivotal scenes in Edenfleet directly as a result of this. And it's not moving anymore.
Oh, here.
So sorry, more technical difficulties.
Let's see. Yeah, so you can do that down there.
Okay.
Or yeah, that's good.
Okay.
It
I was
just
doing
got
it
bumpy.
there and it wasn't. Okay. And one of the other discoveries I had during this 2016 trip was I barely knew it existed, and I still can barely pronounce it. It's in Maine, we would say Arundel. In Disney, they say Arendelle, and I believe it's pronounced Arendelle. It is in the West Sussex, I believe, in England. It was a random, my trip was almost done. Where would we like to go? And the name just popped into my head. And I am so grateful for that because it turned out to be two of the most beautiful days of my life. We went once and loved it so much we went back the next day. So Arendelle is both, has a cathedral, it's a stunning castle, and it's the name of the town. And this very much played into and informed some of the things that my characters saw and experienced, even though they never go there. But it found its way into other aspects of the story. So here we are about to enter the castle grounds. And Rich and Julie were very gracious with me and took me to a nightingale sanctuary, because I'd never heard a nightingale and really wanted to. And we think we did. Thank God for apps. We kept listening to birds and listening, and we think we did. And this, again, was very subconscious. I ended up writing a scene that's important for Fletcher and Lucy, my two main characters, and hadn't even realized that I placed it under this tree. There's a very important scene where they're getting to know each other. And when I was looking through these photos, trying to decide what to share with you, all of a sudden I thought, oh my goodness, that's the Fletcher and Lucy tree. And it was buried in my brain and hadn't realized I was really describing it till I saw the photo again. So here is Arendelle. As you can see, it's a cozy little shack. It's just extraordinarily beautiful. It was built in 3 different stages, in the 1100s, in the Tudor times, and then in the 19th century. So unbelievable amounts to see, and just the sheer size of it. It is owned by the Norfolk family. They are one of the 24 dukes and the premier ones of England currently. So as you can tell, it is beyond impressive. Just another scene. And again, just the quality of the trees, the sky, the clouds, all of it made a difference to my story. Just being able to know what the air smelled like, to know how green their green really is. And one of the things I loved about Arendelle is that their gardens are, of course, as you can see, extremely beautiful, but they're also extremely imaginative. And for me, even though Edenfleet is from my imagination, I wanted it rooted in reality. And so seeing these stunning gardens at Arendelle helped so much to plot out the gardens in my head, and so to weave my characters through them. And again, just more gorgeousness from Arendelle. And then, yes, and more, and this is their cathedral. I believe this is the one that belongs to the castle, not the town. Edenfleet is magnificent. It's not like this. I imagine it much smaller scale than this. But again, just the sense of hearing your feet shing on the marble floors, and how stairs look after generations have walked on them, all of that did reflect in what Edenfleet looks like, even though this is far different. So this is where reality and imagination merge. And one of the things that charm me most about Arendelle is this. It is a golden crown that is perpetually suspended by water, and it spins around. It completely rotates. I'd never seen anything like it. I'm still boggled by it and delighted by it. And it serves as a great prop if you ever want to feel like royalty. Like that. That's Rich, Julie's husband, helping us see how that works. And we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here. Let's go back, get a little sneak preview. So also in Arendelle is a bird sanctuary. I mean, it just kept getting better and better. We just kept discovering, we knew nothing about this place, and we just kept wandering into wonderfulness. And one of the great charms of it in May, when we were there, was it being a bird sanctuary. There were all sorts of wonderful exotic birds and swans. It was Swan Central. And they would literally be inches away from the sidewalk, which was very public and where everyone was walking, and they were just nonchalantly doing their nesting thing. And the birds are so stunning and serene looking, and the cygnettes, the babies, are so adorable. But I had read that swans can be vicious and even deadly when provoked. And again, I hadn't really actively thought about that when we were walking through it, but sure enough, an irate swan does fit into the plot of Edenfleet in a very important scene. So you never know when you're walking, talking, taking all of this in, what can influence your writing. I think that's true for anybody, and certainly my experience. And so one of my great wish lists that was realized on this 2016 trip was I have always wanted to see bluebells in person. I had seen amazing photos of them, had heard rapturous descriptions of them, but to actually be there, I cannot do it justice. Photos don't do it justice. It is beyond magical. Just the play of light on the purples and the blues and the spring greens, it's ravishing. And there's a slight subtle smell of bluebells. It's a bit like lily of the valley. And when you have literally millions of them, it's not an overpowering smell at all. It's still very subtle, but very beautiful. And you know, of course, the woods themselves are ancient and glorious. And I highly recommend, if you can ever get to a bluebell field in May, oh, I hope that for you. And I hope it for me too. I'd love to go back again. And as you can tell, we were all clearly enjoying it. So here I am with my darling friends, Gaynor and Jim. They live in Wales and have been gracious hosts to me more than once as I visit their wonderful country. And this was actually in Crickhowell, Wales, where this was taken. And Crickhowell, very different from Arendelle, but just as magical. It's a sturdy stone medieval town right by a raging river. And it's just happiness incarnate. And here are Julie and I having a great time, just enjoying life and just the wonderfulness of this place. And I had hoped to fit bluebells into my story of Edenfleet, but unfortunately it takes place in 1816. And that was the year without a summer. It's also called the Hunger Year. Mount Tambora had erupted in Indonesia, and its effects, the ash, completely devastated the world meteorologically for that year. And it rained continually. It was shockingly cold. They had snow in June and July in many countries, including Canada, the US, parts of Europe. People did starve as a result. And especially after the Napoleonic Wars, it was an extremely difficult time. And that's part of the reason I wanted to set Edenfleet at this time. I thought there is no better way for my characters to get to know each other than by having them set against this already tough background and then have their own problems. They're either gonna, that's where you see character, and that's where they're gonna really get to see each other clearly. And here are my darling friends, Gaynor and Jim again. This is also in Wales. And just to let you know that this is much more typical of what winter is like. Gray, just sort of like us, only less snow, gray, cold, raw, but still in Wales, it still has its own stone strong beauty that I just love. And I would make a terrible shepherd. I was so anxious for these lambs. They are perched on these incredibly high cliffs. And I mean, they are so close to the edge. And I kept from the sidelines going, oh, honey, be careful, be careful. So I wouldn't make it as a shepherd, but they were absolutely lovely to see, even a little, though a little bit heart-stopping. And the lambs are darling. Again, very Welshy view here. This was at New Year's Day of 2020 when I went back to visit Julie and Rich and Gaynor and Jim. So this is in Wales, where I spent New Year's with them. And, you know, looks actually a little bit like Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds now that I think of 2020 and the COVID. I think it was a foreboding here, but again, just such a stark loveliness there. And I did take these photos, the ones that you're seeing that are in black and white. This is Gaynor walking along a canal. And you can just tell by the trees along the side, even the lichen's ancient and picturesque. And so just so we talk about a little bit more about the writing the book itself, there is such a connection. I used to get very frustrated when I was young, and people would say, well, write what you know. And I thought, I don't want to write what I know. I want to write what I imagine. I want to write what I dream. And writing Edenfleet helped me to better understand that it's a balance. That I may not have lived in 1816, but I lived in 2009, as you did too, when here in New England, we were completely waterlogged. And I know what it's like to live through that with seemingly months of horrendous weather, cold, damp, dank, and trounced vegetation, and what that does to tempers and how that really brings out your personality. Good, better, there's no indifferent. And so that makes a great setting to really get to know people as you're writing them and as you're sharing them with people, your readers. And pretty much, I know it's cliche, but from my experience, they say writing is like making a quilt. You just do it block by block, or writing is like a mosaic. You do it chip by chip, but it's true. You just do a little bit all along the way. And we've got a couple more photos here. Also in 2020, I was very blessed and able to go to the Cotswolds, where I'd wanted to go for years. It is sort of quintessential England, golden stones, charming villages. Again, these beautiful little footpaths over rollicking little rivers. Unfortunately, I went mostly in the evening. It gets dark even earlier there than it does here. So a lot of our pictures were quite dark, but I was able to capture a few. There's Wales again. This is across from Gaynor and Jim's house. They're in the Brecon Beacons, stunning mountains. And everything there just had such a rough-hewness that really spoke to me. Again, on New Year's Day of 2020, And we were walking along this canal, and I saw a couple come up from the right. And I waited with the camera that that Rich had lent me. I'd never really done photography before. I discovered I loved it and hope to do a lot more. And I just waited for the couple to pass under the bridge and snapped just as they went under. And if you look really carefully, you can see that there are swans near this couple. So swans were a theme in both my photographs and in my story. Just dear to my heart chapel that is directly across from Jim and Gaynor's house. So I've spent a lot of time just moseying through there in awe of the stonework, in awe of its sturdiness. It's like a mountain to me. And you can see the hills in the background and sheep, sheep, sheep. Very stereotypical Welsh. And someday I would love to at least set a story in Wales. But even if I don't, it's in my heart and my head. So even if I wrote an imaginary country based on Wales, I could still keep that essence because I've experienced it. Here are the Cotswolds. This gives you just a tiny, tiny little taste of its charm. And all the cottages have names. I believe this was Foss Cottage. The one next to it was Mermaid Cottage. Even though they're not near the sea, but it doesn't matter. It's all charming and gorgeous. And again, we saw those balls of mistletoe everywhere. They're literally hanging wild in the trees. Going in late December, early January turned out to be really a fantastic time to travel. Weather-wise, it's not ideal, but it's certainly milder than here. But the way it's decorated for the holidays is breathtaking. And I was also able to go with Julie to France. We went to Lille, and then we went to Bruges, which that's a whole nother, be still my heart. It is beyond wonderful place. So someday I'll go back there and take some more photos and I'll share those with you. And even their Royal Society of Prevention of Cruelty to Animals donation boxes are charming. And I love the fact in this particular photo that the chain is not on the dog. It seems somehow fitting, even though I'm sure it wasn't intentional, that the chain is off of even the figurine of the dog. And if you peek through the window, that's a typical Cotswold shop. Lots of cheeses, lots of delicious everythings. And so my final words for anyone who would like to travel, I do so hope for you, as I hope for the world and I hope for myself, that we will be able to do so very, very soon. And for anyone who wants to write, anyone out there who's always dreamed of doing it, I would say to you, just as I would say to myself and have to say to myself, just do it. If nothing else, you have the joy, hard though it may be, slogging though it will be sometimes, futile seeming. I know I struggled a lot with, does the world really need another history, mystery, romance? And I deliberately chosen the cliches of, the stern master, the poor governess, the mysterious manor, hoping that I could do something a little fresh and fun with it. I thought, but does the world really need that? But I needed it. My characters were there knocking on my door saying, we're here, have fun, come play with us and come write with us. And I did. And I hope for you, no matter what you want to write, that you will, as Joseph Campbell said, follow your bliss. That will be an adventure unto itself, and you never know where it's going to lead you. So thank you so much. And at this point, we're going to open it up for any questions you might have. So here we go.
Yeah, so I'm fine with, if you have a question, you can go and just unmute your mic. If you want to come on video, you can, and ask away. Paulina, would you end the screen share?
Absolutely. Okay. So we've got.
Or if you want to type it in a chat if you're feeling shy.
Okay. So I think I did it. Nope.
Not
I
yet.
see the new share. I see the resume share.
Let me see if
And
I
I
can do it.
paused it. Stop share. Here we go. There we are.
Ah, there you go. Questions.
And I'm happy to take questions regarding either traveling or, I specifically didn't talk about things I talked about at that presentation because I knew some people at least who are going to be on tonight had been there as well. But there was a lot that I didn't cover, why I chose a pseudonym, why I chose the title. So if you have any questions regarding those, very happy to answer them.
Chris asked, Paulina, would you have any interest in living there?
Oh, Chris, first of all, hello. What a treat to have you on board. That is a very warm, an absolute yes, if I had the money. It is not a cheap place to live. And it's anyone who's tried to find real estate there can tell you it's a heinously expensive place to live. It makes the seacoast look cheap. So, but yes, Julie's saying, yes, she can come stay with me. Julie, my darling friend, is actually staying up at something like 2 o'clock in the morning, her time, from England. And she has been my wonderful, wonderful hostess along with her family. And it's midnight there. And so thank you, darling, for staying up so late to watch this. And Julie is the penultimate host. And I would dearly love to come and stay with you. But in terms of having my own place, it would be lottery time. And thank you so much, Jen Boyle. Thank you. I'm so glad you could come on board.
Did you drive any while you were there?
I did not. Stacy asked a wonderful question. Did I drive? Oh, so no. I was very fortunate that having friends who are very familiar, are from Britain, or Julie, who's lived there most of her life, I didn't have to worry about it. And I'm glad, because driving on the left-hand side, it's very disorienting. And thank you for saying the photos are wonderful. Rich definitely gets tremendous kudos for his sunny May photos that he took, and kudos to him and to Daryl, my coworker, who lent me cameras, and I got to learn that I love to take photos too. Why did I choose a pseudonym? Yes, thank you, Danielle. I'm so glad you're here. So I chose the pseudonym Coventry Forbes because I do love my name, and my last name is very unusual, and I love it. It's Shadowens, and it's pronounced pretty much the way it's spelled, Shadow Ends. But people get incredibly intimidated by it when they see it. I've heard shad toes, shad wees, shad woes, shad wings, and my personal favorite, shadonkers. So I was trying to come up with something that everyone would know how to pronounce, but that was a little unusual. I wasn't going to do, Jane Brown. So I had heard, a friend of mine, of course, I knew about Coventry, England. I still haven't been there. And then a friend of mine mentioned in passing he was going to a wedding in Coventry, Connecticut, and this was decades ago. And I thought, Coventry, now that's a really beautiful name, but what could you put with it? And then I was working at Dartmouth at the time, and I was working in their engineering and master's degree program library, and I was putting away Forbes magazine, and all of a sudden it was like Coventry, Forbes, Coventry, oh, Coventry Forbes, yes. So I have been Coventry Forbes for a long time. I just didn't do anything with it. And except the one time I did was, it was during the late 80s, and the Russian Tea Room was one of the big places to go in Manhattan. It's actually, there's a scene in Tootsie that has Russian Tea Room in it. I had a friend in New York, and he said he would take me there, and I just needed to make the reservations. So when I called this very spiffy place and they wanted my name, all of a sudden I said, Forbes, Coventry Forbes. And he said, well, yes, madam, of course, Miss Forbes will have the place dates. So that was the one time I got to use Coventry Forbes until I wrote the novel.
Paulina, can you hear me?
I
This
can
is
hear
Lynn.
you.
Oh,
Hello,
good.
Lynn.
Hi. I don't know. Can you see me also?
I cannot, no.
Okay. Let
but
me just try.
But your voice is great. Your voice is very
Oh,
clear.
good. Well, you can't see me, but I'm holding up a copy of Edenfleet
Oh.
that you signed for me in June of 2019. So it was a terrific read. I loved
Thank
it.
you.
Really, your book is terrific.
Oh, Wendy's got hers up too.
I have one too.
And
if
I
you
would
could see
say
me, darn
all
it.
of you have supported me so much in so many ways. And so this is my opportunity to say thank you to you. I remember when Wendy came in after reading it and just came over and gave me a big hug
Yeah.
and said, I loved it. And I almost wept. I was so touched. And Lynn, you're saying that means so much to me.
Oh,
Thank
good.
you.
Yeah,
This
it
is
was
my
it's a
baby.
terrific book.
You know, I spent years off and on working on this and just even wondering if it was worth finishing because it seems I had my doubts about it. So knowing that it has been a pleasurable read for you, I can't tell you how that touches me. Literally, it's just beyond words how that moves me. So thank you.
Well, we should have a group book club just for that one book, I think. And you can lead the discussion.
Oh, thank you. I would be very much up for it if people ever wanted to do that. It would be my great honor and pleasure and privilege.
Pseudonym question. Did you see that?
Let's see. I heard lovely pseudonym.
How easy is it to collect royalties with a pseudonym?
What a fantastic question. Thank you, Julie. It is not hard at all because when you have the or Amazon format, and it's basically like filling out an application. And so one of the questions is, they want your name, your real name. They want your bank account. So if your book actually makes you some money, they will go automatically into deposited into your account quarterly. But then it also says, do you have an alternate name that you are publishing under? And so it was all ready for me. And that all I had to do was follow it. Thank you, Amazon, for making it so goof-proofness.
Carolyn says that she also loves the idea of having a book club.
Oh, that's so great.
She's accidentally messaging me privately. But
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Truly, I would be honored if we can ever do that, either virtually or in person, when COVID is a little bit behind us.
So Paulina, my question is there somewhere else you want to go to the UK? And I guess that would also maybe also apply for Wendy with an I, since she's planning a trip. Do you guys have like
I didn't know that.
places you want to go?
Wendy, you're planning a trip?
It's on my bucket list.
Okay.
I want to go sooner now that I just watched all that.
I would say I've been to England 5 times now, which I still can't believe. I just am sort of astounded by how grateful I am. My dear friend Jen lived in London for 5 years, so I was able to visit her twice. And again, marvelous host and a wonderful time. And then now that Julie has moved back there, and then having met through Jen, my Welsh friends, it's made it tremendously easier for me to get over there and to really explore in a non-touristy way. I would say I have yet to get to the Cornwall, Devon area, or the islands like the Isle of Guernsey and Jersey, and and Julie's telling me Cornwall's next. So I would dearly love to go to Cornwall. I just adored the original Poldark series.
Me too.
And just handsome men riding on horseback along the cliffside, what's not to love? So just again, like Wales, it does have very much a Celtic sensibility. There was a Cornish language, like there's still a Welsh language that existed until the 18th century, and it's still there very much in the land names like Pole and Pen and all of those. That's very Celtic-y. So I would very much love to go there, but there's so much I haven't seen, even the places I've gone to. Everything is so crowded, everything is so compact. I go back to Arendelle in a heartbeat, especially if I can finally figure out how to say it. But I'd happily go there in a nanosecond. But yeah, in the north, I don't know so well. I have been up to sort of the Newmarket area on my way up to Scotland, which again, oh my goodness, just riding the train up from that area, from Newcastle up to Scotland with the sea raging on your right-hand side and these sprawls of pasture land and heath on your left, and castles just cropping up unexpectedly. It was very ooh-ah.
I don't think a lot of people really understand, like, I know for me, definitely, the concept that the British Isles is an island, you're like, oh, it's tiny. And then you watch shows like Escape the Country on BBC, and you're like, it's really big. Is it shocking when you're there just how big it is the first couple times you go? You're like, oh.
It's a giant, tiny place within a relatively small space. And I know I've read comparisons to the States, and I think Great Britain's roughly the size of, I think, Massachusetts, or at least England's roughly the size of Massachusetts. Please, if anyone knows that, please correct me. But it's not large. It's certainly not bigger than New England. And yet within it, it has so many microcosms, both in landscape. I mean, I trained through the Lake Country, land of Beatrix Potter. It is sublimely beautiful, and it is so different than the very shallow, mellow green hills of Hampshire, which in turn are very, very different than the moors of the Brontes, which are stunning but quite bleak. I mean, they say bleak, they're not kidding, but it's stunningly bleak. But and there are many climates all over too in terms of the temperature and how often it's going to rain. So yes, it's like God just crammed as much good stuff as he could onto really quite a small space.
I'm sorry, I had my microphone muted because I get feedback from Paulina's speakers. I had asked basically, does England feel as big as it apparently is? And so she answered that. Zach asks, what is your ideal writing setting where you feel most comfortable writing?
Oh, what, Zach, first of all, yay, I'm so glad you're here. And what a delight to have you on board. And in terms of an ideal writing setting, that's a wonderful question. I don't know if I have a wonderful answer. I would say more important than where I am externally is where I am internally. I think that when I'm inspired, when I'm really enthralled in writing the story, I could probably be at a bus stop and I'm just going to get it all down. But when I'm self-doubting, and I know many of you know that both my folks passed away within 3 weeks of each other last year. And as I told my darling boss, Amanda, it was like someone blew out my pilot light. My creative juices just really withered away. And, it was all I could do to just go home and just get the things that needed to get done. And I built a new routine I'm trying to learn French. And so I was doing Duolingo faithfully and still am every single night. But in terms of creating anything new, fresh, I was kind of spent. I didn't have that there. And just recently, I've started going back to a story. I started about a family who live in Amsterdam during World War II, and who take in kind of unexpectedly a Jewish refugee, and unexpectedly in that the mother doesn't know that the daughter has done so. And there have been lots and lots, again, just like with Edenfleet, my first thought was, but there have been so many stories written about Amsterdam in World War II. What possible new fresh thing do you think you can bring in? I mean, and the thing is, my characters are knocking on my door, and they're not going to be quiet until I let them in. So it's a long way of saying that ideally, my writing spot is a quiet corner where I can see nature, experience nature, and know I can put the computer down and then see friends and take walks. But really, when I'm in the groove, I can be pretty much anywhere and just focused, laser focused on it. It really just take me away. But when I'm not, I could be in the 10,000 volume library at Arendelle and my own little reading niche, which they have. Each one has, there are just niches down the row. Each one has its own love seat, its own fireplace, and its own stained glass window. But if I'm resisting writing because I'm not, I'm thinking too much about it and not doing it, I could be there and nothing's going to flow. I just have to be committed. I just have to say I'm going to write whether I think it's garbage or not. So thank you for that wonderful question. And I know that Beth had mentioned, Beth, oh my goodness, what a treat to have you here. Beth and I knew each other from high school, and I don't think we've seen each other since.
No, it's lovely to hear you, Paulina, and my daughter standing in front of me. She's a budding writer. She's written a few novels. She went to Scotland and based a novel on her experience there, and she graduates this year, so is looking for internships, and so she's just amazing. I just love writers, and I love her, and I love what you're doing too. It's fascinating and wonderful. So thank you.
Oh, Beth, well, again, thank you, and warmest congratulations to your daughter. It sounds like she is going to take on the world in a wonderful way.
Thank you. We're hoping.
Well, all the best to her.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions that I've missed or had? Oh, yep, I see Jen has, anyone have any must-sees in Ireland? So let's open it up. Has anyone been to Ireland and have something that they absolutely recommend? I only did a layover in Dublin, so I'm afraid I'm not the best person to speak on this.
Come to the library, we'll find some good
indeed.
resources for you. Just send us an email. We can do that over email too. There's never any off topic at a library.
It wasn't. Thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. Because it is on topic, even if it weren't, it doesn't matter. It was a lovely sentiment, but it is on topic in terms of, you know, how wanting to write and having the energy and the focus to write can oftentimes be two very different things. And I had always thought that, oh, I can write through any situation. I certainly admire people who do. There are many authors I know who can write through earthquakes and disasters. And turns out I needed a bit of a downtime to recoup. But it feels like spring in me as well as outside, that I want to write again, and ideas are beginning to flow.
Julie has a question.
Having a writing partner, that's a really good question. I would certainly be open to it. I don't know how that would look in terms of logistics. You know, does a person write one chapter and then the other person writes the next chapter, which I have seen done, or whether you work together and write the whole thing as a piece. But I think it can be done successfully, and I think when it would be flowing well, what fun. Because writing is a bit lonely. There were many, many times where I thought, man, I could be with my friends right now. I could be watching a movie. It would be much easier than sitting here and trying to pick out the right word for this paragraph. So I think that having a writing buddy, my dear friend Danielle has invited me to a writers group. So I'm excited about that because it's lonely business. If you're born to write, you have to do it. But if you can get that support, that's infinitely helpful. A screenplay of Edenfleet. A couple people have mentioned that as well. I've actually written quite a few screenplays. I did one on Mansfield Park, which Zach knows about, which I still would like to do something with, because I've yet to see a version of Mansfield Park that I thought did Jane Austen justice. It's our trickiest book to translate for modern audiences. So I appreciate the difficulty of it. And I wanted to see if I could do it. So I've written a couple of screenplays. It's just super hard. I mean, people in LA who have been in the business for decades will tell you how hard it is to get your screenplay seen. So I need a miracle. I need to find someone who knows someone who can help me figure that part out. But I'd love to write a screenplay, if not of Edenfleet, certainly of that time period. Thank you for that. Did I let people read parts of my work when it was in progress, or only when it was finished? What a good question. And it's always the writer's dilemma, at least for me. So I let a handful of carefully chosen people I knew would be honest in their critique, but would also be kind and supportive in their feedback. And that was vital. So my niece, Katie, was the first one to read it, the first couple chapters. She had great insights into some areas where I was struggling. I just see someone say Bridgerton. So her saying that she liked it and saying, I want to know more, what's going to happen next, really encouraged me. But she also made some really good points where I had been a little too long-winded or didn't approach it in the best way. And then from there, a couple other dear friends read it in part, including Julie. Thank you, Julie. And again, just carefully, I think it's important to get that feedback before you finish the whole thing. But at least that's works for me. But I would encourage you to choose your first readers very wisely, and just choose people who are going to be sweetly honest with you, but also sincerely encouraging and excited for you. And I was blessed enough to have that, and it made all the difference. Okay.
Just saying you could watch Bridgerton to see how to adapt for a screenplay.
Yes, yes. And I also, I really love the movie Sense and Sensibility, the Emma Thompson, and I have her screenplay that they did publish. And so that was really sort of my, when I did Mansfield Park, I really used that as my template, having never taken a screenplay writing course, and it was tremendously helpful. But I'd love to know more, and especially how to go forward with it now.
So I say we're at an hour.
I can't believe it's gone. My goodness, thank you all.
Let's any last burning questions? Okay, I think we are good to wrap up. Thank you so much, Paulina.
Yes. Oh, thank you.
For your beautiful photos and all the information about writing. A lot of people struggle with that, and I think it's great to talk to someone who has done the entire process. You are awesome.
Well, and I would say credit so very much, gladly to give it where it's due. Stacy has been wonderful about helping me format the pictures and guide me through the whole process. And Zoom is still kind of a new beast for me. And so just helped me to do it, and has just been so patient through it all. And thank you all. Thank you all so much for coming. I cannot tell you how this has touched my heart. And I'll hope to see you in person soon.
Come on by.
Take care, everybody. Good night.